Welcome to the Check with Joseki Tech. I'm Adam Steidley, and we're here to talk about the Optimove Connect conference from 2025. So we attended, this would be a week or two ago at this point. It was on March 19th and 20th in London in the Shoreditch area, where Optimove also has their office. It was a real nice event, and we wanted to hit some of the high points about what we learned and what they were talking about at the conference. So we're going to cover three kind of main areas that they went through in the conference. The first is going to be positionless marketing, which was their big theme for the year, and they had a lot of talks that centered on that. The second area we're going to talk about is areas of Optimove's product that are worth some more investigation, some more of your time. And lastly, we're going to go over some of the events that were about tips and techniques at the show. The structure of the show, they held it at a pretty nice venue that had a main conference hall and a minor conference hall. There were about 400 attendees in total. I'd say there were about 75 Optimove employees and probably, let's say, 25 to 50 other service providers, whether they were consultants or complementary products, and the rest were users of the tool. Typically gaming customers. We work mostly with retail, and we found we were really in the minority. There were maybe 5 of us that were non-gaming customers. So that was kind of an interesting to understand what the balance was. Again, a lot of the attendees were locals. Certainly the companies out of London, it's a lot easier to get to. And it was, a good event. So positionless marketing. So this was Peeny's keynote where he was talking about positionless marketing. So the idea is similar to positionless basketball or total soccer for the Ted Lasso fans. The idea that one player can cover all the different positions. So positionless basketball, as an example, the big person everyone talks about is Nikola Jokic, who is the center for the Denver Nuggets. And he's also renowned for not just the standard sort of big man center game of doing rebounds. You throw him the ball down low and he puts it in the hoop. But he's also got great court vision, and he's one of the leaders in the league in assists. He can also shoot the ball from outside. So he really helps to spread the floor and cover a lot of other jobs. The same way he's doing that, they're finding that all the other players on the court are covering more positions at the same time. It makes for a more fluid game. If you have interest in this from a football, soccer perspective, I would go listen to the Ted Lasso episode where they talk about the Dutch team and moving to that. For us in marketing, though, it's more the idea of soup to nuts. One of the big slides I thought was very interesting was a move from assembly line to autonomous to automated. So with assembly line being our past, autonomous being our present, and automated being our future. So the idea of the assembly line, which is a problem we see organizationally, and it really slows our time to market. So our creative team has to get engaged at some point. Another team has to get engaged for targeting, and then the marketing team may do the scheduling. Another team may do the analysis. Typically, there's other internal things we may need to interact with, like the team that sets up coupons or something similarly. So all of these actions and even the approvals can wind up being a serial process, which makes it very slow. So I know organizations we're working with, a lot of them are seeing 2 to 4 weeks time to market for new campaigns. And some of the folks that we're talking about more like 6 weeks time to market. So it's really important, not surprisingly, to lower that time to market of getting the campaigns out there so that we can have more recency for our ideas and getting things out there. So Optimove is positioned for this because they give you all you would need in one place at one time, fairly straightforward to use, so that the marketer, not only can they schedule the campaign, they can use a click style of creating the target group. That's fairly easy. You don't need to have SQL background or be terribly technical to create your target groups. They have a lot of really good built-in reporting, so you can see how your jobs are producing. And as long as you're supplied with some good core imagery, you can go into the email builder and build out your templates and get that moving for yourself as well. So you can really do everything you need to from one end to the other. There was a real good talk from the team at FDJ United. Rachel and Jorge were talking about it, or Georgi, and they moved from a 6-week time to market down to a 24-hour time to market. And a lot of that was their automating the internal systems so that you didn't have to go to another team for the coupon structure or all the internal tracking stuff that they needed. And it was pretty clear that Georgi, their head of marketing transformation, he and his team are really good. And I approached them afterwards and really presented that to him. Doing all those little pieces of the puzzle is really hard. It's something that we've worked on with clients, and their ability to get that all done is really impressive in getting that time to market down. The other side that was a big benefit that Rachel was speaking to was it energizing the team. So if you can have an idea and get it out there in the field quickly, that keeps you moving forward, keeps you exciting about doing the job of a marketer. People don't get into the business for pushing the paperwork around, but really for having the ideas and getting them in the field. So I think that's impactful for keeping the team motivated and moving the ideas through. What they were finding was that with the slower process, a lot of good ideas just never made it to market because people didn't want to deal with the 6 weeks worth of bureaucracy to get it done. So that, I think, is a real good story about their move to positionless, working on things. There were 2 other talks that I thought were interesting that were also around the positionless marketer. One was Entain's AI Lead Revolution, Embracing a Self-Optimizing CRM by the folks at CICI, as well as Entain, and their move to a positionless marketing. The big takeaway I had from these folks was really twofold. One was simplify, simplify, simplify. You had to make the process easier and simpler at all steps so there weren't too many thorny points to get stuck on and slow things down around the process. The other side there was also around organizational change being a big barrier for the whole thing. That was also the conversation. 2 of Optimove's professional service leads, Sophie and Punal, had a talk the next day, CRM team optimization, bridging strategy, structure, and technology, that I think is also worth a little bit of a listen. And there, it's the change management within the organization. So when we talk about all these layers, this is something that my team's talked about internally, about our moving more toward positionless marketing. Those other teams are not going to give up their grips on what they're there for so easily. So the creative team is one for us that's been really the slow player in getting things to market. And it's not their fault, right? As with all large organizations, you'll have as few team members as you can manage to make things still move so that things are still viable from the finances. But that team is also doing creative across the whole organization. So they're buried. So we're not always their top priority for a given point. So things slow down. But on the counter side is the creative team is there because they're the ones that have the copywriters. They're the ones that can create great images, and they're frankly better at it. So we want their input when it yields us a better result. But the problem is if we're always waiting on the better result, that gets to be a problem. The other thing that we find and that everyone is going to find is a lot of times senior leadership wants to have their thumbs in the pie and they want to have approval on copy or approval on imagery for emails. And I think this is appropriate for some of the larger campaigns and the bigger enterprise pushes, but having them involved in every single email is just going to slow things down. It always takes those guys a couple extra days to get to things, and they always have some input, which sends us back to the drawing board. So if you really are going to want to get to that 24-hour turnaround, organizationally, you're going to have to empower that marketer to actually do their job and trust them to do their job. So yeah, it might not always be the best result, but as long as they're meeting your brand standards and pushing things forward, you're going to be better fighting those campaigns out. And to me, the kind of ancillary notion to the positionless marketer that I think is really a more powerful one to look at is the agile marketer. So when you look at agile with IT development, which is something we've been doing for years, we talk about MVPs, minimum viable product. So what's the least we can do to get our product to market to then learn how the market actually reacts to it? I think this is totally a true idea for marketing. We don't know which campaigns are going to be successful and which ones aren't. So we've got to have some humility in that and say, okay, let's do our best to get more ideas to market and then just see which ones are working and then invest more in the winners. So that as an approach, I think you've got to look at a number of areas around empowering that marketer to be able to get that item to market. And I think one of the critical things in there is going to be creative. So you've got to trust them to work within the brand guidelines. And maybe the creative isn't perfect the right time out, but it's good enough. When we think about what we need to put together for getting a campaign going, there's going to be a number of different aspects. One is going to be targeting. This is probably the biggest one. Am I talking to the right people at the right time? Then the offer. When I send the email, is there a coupon in there? What is it that I'm trying to hook the customer with? Is it something's on sale this week and what are the good prices? Is it some aspect of my business that they weren't aware of so that they can then cross-sell or cross-shop to that other area? And then lastly, it's going to be the message that I'm delivering is the subject line catching people's interest so they're opening the email. Once the creative comes up, does it really hammer home the point? And when we look at all how the campaign performs, I think the creative sometimes gets more weight than it deserves. If you've got the right offer that you're pitching at the right time to the right person, the perfect image is not going to close the deal. The offer is going to. So to me, it's about let's get some more offers to market, and then let's be diligent about measuring. A problem that I think we also see time and time again is the marketing team doesn't really take a broader ownership. I think this is a good point for positionless marketing as well, is analysis. Is you've got to really own that campaign. And once it gets out in the field, see how it's doing. And you've got to have the guts to kill the ones that are losers. So a lot of times we're just judged on how many campaigns we bring to market and not their ultimate success. So you got to prune the tree and find the ones that aren't making money for you, get rid of them and replace them with more optimal or tune them. So again, when we get these ideas out to market, let's find the ones that are winners, and then let's go back and let's refine that creative to make it a little better and bring them from good to great. And let's just keep churning so we can get the best campaigns out there. So that was a lot of the conference was around this notion of positionless marketing, which is really at its core pitching Optimove as a tool where you can do all these things in one place at one time. I think it's an interesting idea to think about internally and is worth some conversations. So the next area of the conference I thought was good to talk about were the different product discussions that they were having around different areas around Optimove that you may or may not be using in your organization. So the lead off here was Shai's presentation, The Future of Personalization, How Agentic AI Empowers the Positionless Marketer. So a bit of a tongue twister of a title, but Shai, who's their SVP of product, he does a really good job of presenting what new items are coming out in the tool. And this, to me, is the one meeting to really go back and watch. And I will rewatch it when they post it, which will probably be in the next couple of weeks. The things that he pushed on that were big components to look at. Some are going to be super easy to try. Send time optimization, which is a feature that Salesforce Marketing Cloud has had for years. They're going to have, and it looks like simply the same as checking a checkbox to send it at the right time. That's something we're definitely going to try, see what it does for us. I don't think there's any reason not to be using that more consistently in your campaigns. They're also going to be introducing some features to allow you to do different variations around your subject line. So that'll be interesting. I think stirring up the subject line, especially on recurring campaigns, is a good way to keep things a little more lively on people's inboxes. Again, a small feature, but something worthwhile. Kind of a sleeper of a feature that they're talking about are data connections into the content. So this is going to allow us inside of our email templates, the same way we reference customer attributes, we're going to be able to make API calls. Now, that's going to do great things for those of us in retail. We've got product catalogs, and frequently from like a trigger for an abandoned cart, we'll have the SKU of the item. But currently, we've also got to pass in the name of the item and the image to use with it and the click-through to use, because we don't have any way to do a lookup in the email. Now we can do much more creative content because we can be looking those pieces up. Another thing that I know that we have issues with is if we want to talk about someone's best store and what services are offered at the store, address, hours of operation, et cetera, which would be nice to put in the footer. Now we have to use dynamic mail to create pieces around that, and that limits us to more like a one big image approach. And I think we can do a lot more creative license if we can do lookup calls there. There also will be more personalization, things we can use with these data connections. It really opens up a lot of avenues for us to do new items because it's a new set of tool to put in there. Testing on this is going to need to be pretty big. I do have concerns when we start doing things in millions, what it's going to look like for the caching algorithm they have in there. All this content is going to need to be done at time email send. So if you're sending campaigns with millions of people in it, you're really going to hammer your back end, and you don't want to kind of gum up the whole works there. But this is a feature we're super excited about. And these features he all intoned would be in the next quarter or two availability. So 2025, Q2, Q3 kind of stuff. Longer term, there was conversation about content creation at scale. So this was ways to generate content where you could say, what are this player's top 2 games and what is their value segment? So you might have 10 times 10 times 10, 1,000 different variants and ways to generate out all those combinations of content to be able to show to the people. This seemed a little more on the futuristic front, and I'm interested to look at that as it dug in. So again, this was Shai's intro, definitely worth a listen. If you're going to listen to one thing from all the postings, I would go and listen to Shai's conversation about the future of Optimove's tool set, some items that are there right now. Around other points in the conference, there was a good talk about the new self-service data features that's worth looking at. Optimove has had this for the last couple of quarters, where you can upload an FTP and add that to the customer record, either one time or as a permanent recurring kind of job. They're also adding other channels like Snowflake in there and Azure Cloud, so you'll be able to have more different data sources. I think this is really useful if you're a smaller shop and you're not using professional services dollars with Optimove's data team to add new elements. I think you're going to want to really look at this toward being able to manage your own data. That was best practices for managing data with Optimove was the name of that. Worth looking at. You probably have this tool in your Optimove instance already, also worth just playing with. Pretty straightforward, seems to work pretty well. I wouldn't say it's perfect. There's a few things that they can add in there around recurrence. One of the problems I think to watch out for is it wants the file to always have the same name. And it's really a best practice to have each day's file either be in a different directory with that date in it or name the file with the date stamp in it so you can tell one file from the next. So that's a bit of a wrinkle. If you have the ability to set up logical links or symlinks, then you can get around that problem in a pretty straightforward way as well. That was one good point. There was also talk about OptiPromo, their new coupon promo engine, and OptiX, which is their recommendation engine. Again, there were talks on both of those fronts, and those are things that we haven't tried at with our clients yet, and we're really going to dig in. We have some questions on how OptiX is going to work for us as a retailer. That's apparently been very popular for the gaming clients who've had a lot of success with it, but I don't know how many retailers have really dug into it. And we're currently using our own custom built, again, by the Optimove professional services folks, product recommendation model. So I'm very interested to A/B test what we can get out of OptiX, what we can get from our own model. Also optimistic that, if we see that it's not doing as well as it needs to for us, that Optimove will listen to us and help, bring the tool where it needs to be for retail customers, because I do think we all have a shared interest there. OptiPromo is going to give you some more abilities to have a variable promo for different value segments on your side, a few other little features of that area. But again, we're always pushing promos and coupons, so more and different ways to get that out there quicker is going to be interesting as well. Lastly, Optimove bought a company called Adact, which has a gamification tool. Their founder, who kept describing himself as a humble Estonian, was really a nice guy, talked through how it's added engagement. I do think this is something that's going to be very interesting to give another thing to talk to your customers about. They had a lot of survey type games. They had like good old Snake, like on your phone from back in the day, matching games, little fun kind of stuff. They had a real good use case from an Estonian egg producer, had done a number of campaigns around Easter that had engagement numbers where people were spending 20, 30 minutes playing the game. So I have some sense that the game was being handed to the kid in the back seat who was playing the Easter egg game while they were going to the supermarket. But that's great brand engagement. And we do a lot of work with Staples, and obviously back to school is a big deal for Staples. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for fun games for a kid to play that is just going to have a warm association between the back to school purchasing process and the brand. So there's a good opportunity for more connections there. Likewise with surveys, there's a lot of content. And again, at Staples, what's the right office chair for me to buy is a good question, and a natural survey to lead your customers to a different product set. And more ways to present that information to your customers is going to be better. I do think it's very useful for us to not only have the same sorts of messages to our customers. Here's what's on sale this week. Here's a coupon, please buy more. Those messages get old, they get stale. So being able to have more content marketing where you can say, here's a game, let's play. Here's something, let's learn, I think is a good counterpoint to a lot of the marketing that we really get sort of stuck in over the months. So those I think are good angles. I did have a one-on-one interaction with the humble Estonian. He gave me a nice demo, and I really think that the tool is going to be very useful for us going forward. Certainly easy to try and see how it does. And lastly, around all the product stuff, that was the notion I walked away from the whole conference with, that we need to have as a part of our regular process. What are the new tools? Try the new tools, A/B test them against what we're currently doing, and pick the winners and drop the ones that aren't going to be useful for us. But if we don't have that habit of trying the new things, we won't be trying the new things. We get stuck in knowing how we do business today, but we do have to get our eyes up occasionally, see what new is out there, spend a little time, spend a little risk in seeing what there is available. And you're going to find some stuff that works for you, and that'll help with your portfolio of campaigns. So the last area in the conference was around some of the sort of tips and techniques. So Jonathan Inbar had a good session. Dana Rausch had a good session. Jonathan's was around tips and techniques with Optimail. A big trick that I know that we've used that he's talking about is naming your images in intelligent ways so you don't need to use as much conditional execution. So if you've got the use case we had 10 different categories, each of which had a different bonus level. So we had 30 different images. So rather than do a big giant conditional that would have been too big, we simply named all the images, image underbar, category underbar, bonus level. And then you would build that image name in your URLs, and you would just get the right one displayed automatically. There was a real good question about, well, what do I do with my call to actions? And if your landing pages don't also align with those, then you could create a custom data attribute, a feature that if you haven't used is a great one. And you could do those same conditions to then map out those 30 cases to what the specific URLs are that you need. And then you're going to have that available to you as well. That's good. It's definitely worth a listen. Dana's talk was around big events, prepping for, the Super Bowl or big sort of one-day events that bring a lot of betting in this case. Good talk about approaching that. That's definitely one I'm going to go back and listen to as we get closer to peak to make sure that we're using some of the ideas and numbers she had there behind her. So it was a good show. There are a couple more meetings. There was one about testing and one about OptiWeb that I wasn't able to attend because there was something competing at the same time slot. Those are also some talks I'm going to go back and listen to. So that was OptiConnect 2025. Comment below with what your thoughts were. I'd love to hear from people. And definitely a good event. Definitely looking forward to next year.